Hello and welcome back here onto GMN. Now, Rishi Sunak is suggesting that a general election will happen towards the end of this year, whilst he says he still has a lot more to do before then.
My working assumption is we'll have a general election in the second half of this year, and in the meantime, I've got lots that I want to get on with. This Saturday, we'll be introducing a significant tax cut for millions of people in work, worth on average £450 for an average worker. Because we've halved inflation, we want to keep managing the economy well and cutting people's taxes, and I want to keep tackling illegal migration. And we cut the number of arrivals last year by over a third, but we've got more to do, and we want to get the Rwanda scheme through Parliament and up and running. So look, I've got plenty to get on with, and that's what I'm focused on doing, delivering for the British people.
Well, recent polling suggests to us here at GMN shows that 43.3% of people support the Labour Party, while 25.5% of people support the Conservatives. The Lib Dems, on the other hand, have a 10.5% lead in the polls. Just support. Let's now bring in Matthew Price, who is from Research Executive at Delta Polls. Thank you so much for joining me here on the programme today. It's not looking too good for the party in power, the Conservatives. Just explain what are some of the key factors that are influencing this shift in sentiment, especially after, nearly 14 years of power from the Conservatives.
You're absolutely right, Hugh. And I think you've actually hit the nail on the head there when you bring in the fact that the Conservatives have been in power for nearly 14 years. A lot of what we're seeing in terms of the polling is that people want change. The Delta poll figures from our most recent poll from the Mirror are very much in line with the figures that you just quoted. We have Labour on 42%, the Conservatives on 25%, and the Liberal Democrats on 12%. I think if you're looking for reasons why the Conservative Party is faring so poorly these days, the numbers don't tell you the whole story on their own, of course. But I think the fact that they've been in power for so long, the series of scandals and the series of leadership upheavals has to be part of the story.
When we're looking at the latest economic polls, it shows that 53% of people in the UK think the UK economy will enter a recession this year. I mean, what do you think that shows Rishi Sunak, the trust that the public have in him, and also to the opposition party, Labour?
Well, that's a very good point. I think people's expectations for the economy are quite negative at the moment. We see that time and again in polling. And we ask a question every week to our sample: who would they trust more to manage the economy? Would it be Rishi Sunak with Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor of the Exchequer, or would it be Keir Starmer as Prime Minister with Rachel Reeves as Chancellor? And what we see every single week is that most people, by a significant margin, would trust a Labour government more than the current Conservative government. The Conservative government generally has the trust of only about a third of respondents, whereas a potential Labour government has the trust of closer to half. And that's a pretty robust finding. It varies quite little week to week, and that's a sign that the people have kind of made up their mind on that issue at the moment, that the Conservatives are not to be trusted with the economy.
Do you think it's possible for Rishi Sunak to turn this around and for him to get a majority at the general election, which is likely to be at the end of this year?
It would certainly be a very significant ask for Rishi Sunak to win an overall majority in the next election, but it would be too hasty to say that it's impossible. At this stage, we are possibly still a whole year away from the next general election, and an awful lot can happen in a year. As we say, there are kind of known unknowns. We don't know how the next budget will be received. It's possible that the Conservatives will see an uptick in their support following that. But there are also unknown unknowns. We can't say what kind of scandals might emerge relating to politics in the next year. We can't say what major developments might take place in the wider world. And without having that knowledge, it's impossible to rule out any kind of development in the next general election. But what we can say is that if the election were held tomorrow, it is more than likely that a Labour government would be returned, and there's very little hope for the Conservatives unless something happens to really shake up the polling.
Taking a look at Scotland now, it's a bit more of a messier picture there. There have been scandals, particularly surrounding the SNP party. What sort of majority are we expecting to see there? Is it more likely to be Labour than the SNP party?
That's a very good question. And Scotland is really a key battleground in this coming election. If Labour is to win an overall majority, it will be not just because they have defeated the Conservatives throughout England and Wales, it'll be because they've come out on top in Scotland compared to the SNP. Whether that's going to happen is a very difficult question. As you say, the SNP has been rocked by scandals in recent months. But the SNP, of course, is historically the strongest party when we go back the last couple of elections in Scotland. And certainly in the last election, Labour struggled to gain any kind of a foothold in Scotland at all. Our polling at the moment does suggest something of a Labour resurgence in Scotland, but it's much too early to say with any certainty whether Labour or the SNP will come out on top. But that is a key battleground to watch.
Okay, Matthew Price, thank you so much for joining me here on the programme. Really appreciate your insight today. You've given me great insight. Thank you so much for your time. And of course, if you want to find out more information, do make sure to visit our website at www.goodmorningnews.co.uk.